Hi folks, this is Al with BaumBuilds.com, here with another instructional video for the BDT, the Bolt-together Drift Trike that you put together yourself. This video is just one in a series of videos intended to be used in combination with the build plans available through BaumBuilds.com or on eBay, username Auto Beverage. In today's video session, we're going to be covering drawing 351, which is the frame assembly for the two-seat drift trike. Well, here we are at the shop again. So let's get going. Here's the clean work area for drawing 351, the frame assembly for the two-seat drift trike. As you can see, we have all our items necessary for this assembly pulled from the bill of material and laying out on the table, ready to go, including the hardware, tools, and drawing. Let's have a look at drawing 351. As usual, we have various views, including exploded view. We have a bill of material. We have assembly notes in the upper left hand corner, and in this case drawing 351 is a two-sheet drawing, and here we have some more views in here which are designed to identify or help you identify where all the hardware goes in this particular assembly. The tools for 351 include a 5/32 Allen key, 7/16 and 9/16 socket and a ratchet to drive it, a 7/16 wrench. I have a speed square here. I have a little bit of masking tape, and I'll explain that later. And I have a speed clamp. Now this is optional. If you don't have one of these, you can get away without it. And let's take a look at the hardware. In this case, we have large quantities of hardware for this build, so I'm not going to bother counting them and pulling them out of the bags and boxes. But we'll take it right from the box or the bag as we need it. So let's get started. So checking the assembly notes, not much important there except for note 3, and that is that we need to modify this U-bolt as shown. So I'm not going to show it here because I did cover this in a previous video, but if you missed it, all you're going to do is you're going to measure back inch and a quarter back from each of these legs and cut that off. And the reason we have to cut that off is I'll show you real quick here. Later on, we need to get this down through these two holes. Our front footrest tube is going to go through here, and then this hole and that hole are going to accommodate our U-bolt. And if we don't cut the ends off, we won't be able to get it down in there. So if you haven't done that already from the previous video, go ahead and do that. Okay, we're going to start out by laying out some of our major components here on the workbench. So you got item 2 here, item 4, items 6 and 7. Now there's a right and left hand version of items 6 and 7. So we're going to lay those out just like you see it. And then we're going to take our hardware here, which is items 13, 15, and 16, the 1/4 inch fasteners. And you'll just pull them right off the bill of material there. And we're going to take that and we're going to start populating all these holes here in accordance with the drawing. Now, these holes should line up here. I don't know how well you can see that. But if they're actually off a little bit, one trick is to take a screwdriver, it's a little bit smaller than the hole, and just put that in there and use it to manipulate. And you'll actually be able to bring that plate and holes right into alignment, just like that. And then you can use that along the way as you go to manipulate the holes. So just start populating that one at a time, getting your bolts into the holes with the washers and nuts behind, and we'll be back. We're going to do one of these bolts just to get you started here. So I got the first one in there. Now notice that these are access holes. These are actually access holes, so you'll have to put a washer and a nut from the back side. Now, as a general rule, any place where there's a slot, you should try to use a washer. That's the general rule. And you should also use a washer where it's called for in a drawing. Now, if you're having difficulty and can't get a washer back in there, it's okay. Just put them in wherever you can. So these are access holes. You're going to have some patience, and this is where if you have a helper with small fingers, it'd be helpful to get back there and get them involved in the process. This is a family project, after all. So get them in there, put that washer on or put that nut in there. So just want to show you from the back side, very difficult to see, but you see it down in there. You do have access, it's a little bit tight, so it's going to take you a while to populate these. But I did not want to use through bolts in this area in the front where it's highly visible. Now some of the areas back here, along here, I use through bolts, so it's a lot easier. We just put it all the way through the tube. But up here, I didn't want a bolt head on one side and a nut on the other side. So it's a little bit tougher, but we got to get those nuts on the inside of the tube where shown. So I wanted to show you the trick with the tape. This is the reason we have the tape. So in difficult areas like that where we need to get a wrench on, what I'll do a lot of times is just take a piece of masking tape here, just like this, slip the box end section of the wrench over, and just give that a little bit of a press. You see that? And now what that does, that holds that in there perfectly. So when you snake this down in here, just like that, you can hold that on there, and then as you tighten it, obviously the tape will release. So you can use that trick wherever necessary. Use little hands wherever you can, and let's populate that front area with all the hardware, then we'll come back. Alright, I'm going to cut back in here just to show our progress. So what I have is I have these 8 here, 4 on this side, 4 on the other side, and then these 2. Notice I don't have the cup holder in there yet. We'll get to that in a little bit. So around the other side, we're looking the same way. And if you look in there, you can actually see the washer and the nut. Again, have some patience. It's not easy. So I wanted to show you how to attack these bottom ones now. So I want to show you the underside here. So we have an access hole here, so we can put our bolts with a washer. This is a slot. Bolts, washer, and nut on the underside. So here and here, of course, these will be easy to access. Now these 4 are a bit difficult to access. Of course, these are easy, but you're going to reach down in from this direction with a wrench. Again, it's a pain, but we didn't want the nut sticking out on the opposite side up front here in this highly visible area. So I'm going to continue working, populating this with our hardware, getting the bottom side here, flipping it over, getting the same fasteners on the opposite side, and then we'll come back. Alright, this is what it should look like. Now remember that we're accessing these and these from this hole, this access hole. These you'll be able to get from the end, and of course those we already talked about, and on both sides. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to move forward with the cup holder now that we're done flipping this thing around, and the front bearing support angles. So we're going to take item 11, our cup holder, and we're going to put the heads of the hardware in from this side, and then we're going to be able to lift that up into place right here. And then on the back side, we're going to use our nuts and washers just like we did before. With our cup holder, item 11 installed, let's move on to item 5, the bearing mounting angles, and there they are. I already have them partially installed. I snugged up the middle fasteners, left the other ones loose, and here's why. We want to take our straight edge and we want to lay this across here. Let me see if that turns out for you guys. What we want to do is we want those 2 surfaces to be flush. These 2 faces to be flush, because that's where our bearing is going to mount. And then we also want to square up or straighten up the top here. So we're going to make sure those 2 surfaces are flush as well. And you can just use a little rubber mallet or whatever you want to tap those around and get them all into position just the way we want them, and then snug them down. Next we're going to move on and install our footrest tube, which is item 1. Now we're going to do that by snaking it through this hole in the front of the frame. Okay, now remember these 2 holes down here. Now I just have a piece of paper under here so you can see it. There's a hole here and a hole here. We shortened our U-bolt, so what we're going to do now is just work that thing down in there. Now it may be tight, may be difficult to get down in there, and if it's too difficult to get down in there, then you're just going to cut a little bit more off of it. But manipulate it around until it drops through the hole, just like that. And then next we're going to take item 1, which is your big footrest. And I'm just going to take that and I'm going to lift this bolt up a little bit, the U-bolt, and I'm just going to carefully snake this footrest right through there, right through the U-bolt. Of course, I'm trying to do it with one hand, but we're going to snake that right through there and right out the other side. I'll keep going until I get that all centered up, just like that. And then of course we're going to reinstall the nuts on the bottom of the U-bolt. Now we'll just snug those for now, because this tube, the footrest tube, of course is going to be adjustable front to rear. So let me get those on there and we'll move on. Okay, with our footrest tube item 1 in place using the U-bolt, let's move on to our front cowling, which is item 12. Now what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to take the hardware there and you're going to have to put it in there first, just like that. Washer, then the bolt, and then you'll use your 5/32 Allen key to access the hex on the head of the screw right down through these holes. So we're just going to take this, set that down into place just like that, put our washers and nuts on the underside, and then we'll be back. Alright, with the cowling, item 12, installed in the front, that's going to button up the entire front end. So let's shift to the back where we have items 8 and 9. Now notice I have our frame blocked up here. So we're going to take our various hardware. This is the long hardware, the 4-inch that we're going to use right here. And the 4-inch we're going to use in these two holes and these two holes. And then here and here we're going to use our shorter hardware again. So let me put those in there and we'll be back. Alright, all the hardware is in items 8 and 9, as you can see here. But only snug. We want to be able to move that around just a little bit before we lock it all together. So next we're going to take our tubes, item 3, and we're going to go right, slide them right into those holes right there. So you're going to have 4 bolts. These are the long 4 inchers. And then you're going to have 4 bolts, which are the 2 3/4 bolts going in this direction. So washers, every place there's a slot, and let's install those and come back. So with items 8 and 9 in place, I went ahead and put the 2 tubes, item 3, the wing tubes there, the axle tubes in place. So remember, everything is just snugged down, nothing tight. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to center this up the best we can, line everything up, have an even gap here, and then we'll tighten these 2, 4, 6, 8 screws down. We'll do that first, and then we'll come back and we'll tighten these 2 and the same 4, 1, 2, or 2, 4, 2, 4. So do this, 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 and this first, and then come back and we're going to do these 4 and these 4. And then once we do that, we'll draw down these last 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. So go ahead and tighten everything up in that sequence, and we'll see you when you get back. Okay, items 3, 8, and 9 are all buttoned up and fully tightened. And now we're getting down to it. The only thing left is item 10, and there's 2 of them. One goes on each end of the tube here. So here's item 10. It's got that crazy looking bend. So that goes on there just like that. And you'll see the 2 big bolts are where the bearing is going to mount, so that should be in the back, just like you see. And then this slot is an access slot so that you can get your nuts and washers right in here to the back. So we're just going to install item 10 on either side using item 14, 15, and 16. And we'll be back. Alright, I'm going to jump back in here just to show you that you are indeed accessing through this slot. You're going to have to use your tape and box end wrench method here. So it's not too bad, just have some patience. You got to put that right in through that access slot that I showed you just a few minutes ago. Line it up right there, and then just screw this in. Now Okay, and we'll take our Allen wrench and tighten those down and get the ones on the opposite side. Item 10 is loosely installed. See, I have the hardware in there, but not completely tightened. And the nuts were accessed from this access hole. So the hardware on both sides of item 10. Now, before we tighten this down, we want to square this up. See how I can move it here? I can move it a little bit up and down if I try, and definitely left to right. So what we want to do is take our square, a little speed square, framing square, whatever you have, and we want to make sure that those two surfaces are level, or parallel, I should say. See how I can manipulate that? So I want to bring this square over here, and I want to make sure that that is square or flush, just like that. And then I want to take my tape measure, and I want to measure the distance from the top of the tube to that surface, and then the same on the bottom. So get those two dimensions equal and have it square just like that, and lock those down. And then you can do the same thing to item 10 on the right side of your trike. And folks, you are done with drawing 351, which is the frame assembly. If it looks like this, good job. We will see you on the next instructional video.